then hopefully by in 2 weeks it'll get withdrawn, and then that'll just be our report that's been withdrawn.
Good morning. Good morning. 7 o'clock already. Welcome to the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for February 18th, 2021. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item that's on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms on the table along the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated on the left of the dais. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, they either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. Items 1 through 8 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any staff member, audience member, or Planning Commission member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this Planning Commission are recommendations to the City Council. The City Council will make the final decision. Are there any items 1 through 8 that staff would like removed from the calendar for separate consideration?
Item number 4.
Item
please.
number 4, okay. Any items that any Planning Commissioner would like removed? Item 5. And any items other than 4 and 5 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? All right. The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1 through 3 and 6 through 8 per staff's recommendation. All right. Rachel made the motion to approve items 1, 2, and 3, and 6, 7, and 8 per staff's recommendation, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Item number 4.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 4 is a rezone application from the public district to the general commercial district. And this is property that we probably all are most familiar knowing it as the detox facility along La Crosse Street. The county did sell the property to Great Plains Tribal. And when they approached us about what it is that they wanted to use at that site, it appeared at that time that they would need to rezone it because they are not a government entity, which is basically what is limited within the designation of public. However, there is a provision within that zoning district that also says that they're a nonprofit, they can operate. This morning, all of the commotion that you saw was reviewing some documentation that was made available to us that does show that Great Plains Tribal is a nonprofit. So for today, what we would like is to continue this item to your March 25th. Andrea, that's putting it out a month for notification, correct? Okay, thank you. To your March 25th Planning Commission meeting, and I believe we're going to be coming back on the 25th noting that the application's been withdrawn, and that will let them get a building permit to renovate the existing structure so they can use it for their facility and not require the rezone. And what that does is it puts the neighborhood at ease that potentially a future owner down the road wouldn't put a convenience store or a casino at that location. So if you would please, our recommendation is to continue to your March 25th Planning Commission meeting, and I hope we'll be coming back with good news at that time.
Vicki, I do have a speaker request from Julie Money. Was she the lady that exited?
She did, I think, and she has just been pivotal in bringing forward this information. We will visit with Great Plains Tribal, and then we will call Julie and give her an update so that she doesn't have to come back for that meeting on the 25th.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Haven made the motion to continue item number 4 until March 25th. And Mike Quasney seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, item number 5. Karen?
Thank you. This is a question for staff, and you probably know what the question is, Vicki. But I am assuming that you're going forward because the plat's okay, and that if for some reason the rezone would be approved, then they can continue. But it seems, to me, I'm thinking about it, if you're the applicant and you can continue with your final plat, and you can't go anywhere, it seems like, why don't you put the two at the same date, same time? So that's the question.
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
So in visiting with the applicant, they understand that, and remember this, a preliminary subdivision plan is a what if. If I plat, what would be required? And one of the stipulations is that before they go on to step 2, submittal of the construction plans, before they spend time designing it, the property has to be rezoned. But they wanted the what if list. So they wanted this to go forward, even though later on in the agenda, the associated rezone is not being supported by staff due to our comprehensive plan and future land use plan. So in noting that, and they're fully aware that if the rezone fails at council, then they're done. They would have to come back with something that would be appropriate in the existing zoning designation. But for now, this puts them as far as they can go. They are confident that they are going to get the vote at council, and this keeps the project going forward.
Okay, and I'm sure KTM knows the timeframes and all that stuff, so I'm okay with that. I just wanted to bring that up so everybody knew kind of why they're doing that. So.
Excellent. Thank you, Karen.
Good, thanks.
Our recommendation is to approve with stipulations.
Okay, Karen made the motion to approve item number 5 with stipulations. Is there a second on that from anyone? All right, Haven seconded that. Any other questions or comments on item number 5? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That takes us to item number 9. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll have to recuse myself on this.
Okay. Mike's going to abstain. Marty?
Sure. So item number 9 is 21 PD 001. It's a final planned development overlay to allow an apartment complex up at 427 DeGeese Drive in the Big Sky subdivision there. And so there's the aerial. You can see there's 2 apartment complexes kind of directly to the south there, and then a little bit farther down in DeGeese you get into the Homestead Street area, and we have a nice mix of apartment complexes and single-family homes. There's nothing wrong with this project. The reason that we're bringing it up is we think it's a good example of affordable development in the city. The project is catered toward individuals who have income at 30 to 60% of the Rapid City area median income. It's going to be a 3-story, 41-unit apartment complex, and it meets all of our zoning ordinances. So we just kind of wanted to highlight this really quickly to kind of shout out Lloyd Companies for doing a really great project and being great collaborators throughout this whole process. So it's going to be a medium density residential zoning, but it's in a PD. And future land use has that as urban neighborhood, in which apartment complex is an appropriate use. Right here, it's along a proposed collector street of DeGeese. And then this is kind of the site plan. We just kind of wanted to note that although they were supposed to provide 16,400 square feet of open space, they actually provided 25,000 feet in addition to this playground right here. They provided more than enough parking and a landscape island as per our landscape ordinance. And in our development review team meeting, we noted that because this is affordable housing, it's a little bit unrealistic to assume that every single tenant will have reliable access to a vehicle. And in addition, this property is not along an existing rapid ride route. So the applicant agreed to install a covered protected bike rack right here, which we think will be really great for the residents and was kind of a really good example of communication and collaboration between our organizations. This is the final landscaping plan, which exceeds the required point total. And this is kind of just a view of the playground equipment that they're going to provide. And then these photos show that the sign's been posted, and this is dig east looking to the south towards the rest of the development area, which, as I said, is kind of a mix of apartment and single-family homes. And to the north. So we're just excited about this project. We think it's a good mix. It's a good housing type to have in this neighborhood that's kind of developing as we speak. And we're kind of excited to say that we recommend approval with stipulations.
Thank you, Marty. Karen?
I just have one question, Marty. You were talking about the parking, and because you don't feel there's a lot of people that will have cars, did you reduce the parking requirement, or no? Okay,
No, we did not. They were able to meet the 1.5 per unit parking requirement in addition to providing the bike rack.
Okay, I missed that part. Thank you.
Yep.
Rachel?
It's being a little finicky this morning. So you mentioned that it doesn't have any connectivity with Rapid Ride. Do you know how far away from Rapid Ride it is, from a stop or anything like that?
I didn't calculate the miles, but I don't believe that there's a Rapid Ride that goes that far down Elkvale.
So it's quite a ways.
It's quite a
from you.
ways, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I see they've used the T turnaround geometry on the end. Haven't seen that for a while. It's
Yeah.
kind of fun.
Yeah.
Has emergency and fire. Had a thorough review of that. Geometries that seem to be okay. Okay. That's my question. Thank you, Tim. Thank you.
I'm going to piggyback on Rachel's comment on the rapid ride. Does community planning interface with transit at all on these? Because, I mean, Whisper Rock is also I don't know how many units, 90-ish of affordable housing that's right there as well.
At one of your previous meetings, and I don't know if it was the last one or maybe a couple times out, we had Kip in the audience, and he had noted that this is something, because he's our transportation planner, he does collaborate with them very closely, and as they see more and more development in this area that lends itself to optional and diversified transportation, this is something that they are currently reviewing, and hopeful that that route would get extended into this area and other areas in the future. But it is something that is being discussed.
Great. Good deal. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so this is the same in this location. It's only blocks away from the elementary school? Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you. It's a great project.
All right, any other questions, comments on item number 9? All right, Rachel made the motion to approve item number 9 with stipulations. And Vince seconded, no, Eric Hikas seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The motion carries with Mike Kwasny abstaining. Item number 10.
Morning. Item number 10 is 21RZ008, a rezoning request from office commercial district to medium density residential district for a parcel of land approximately 5.31 acres in size located at 7223 Healing Way. Item number 5 was the associated preliminary subdivision plan to create 14 lots. Here we have aerial of the property showing it's currently undeveloped. What we do have is to the west we have some commercial development, offices, medical. Also to the north we have a hotel, orthopedic and a gas station. And on the east side here, there's a lot more now, but on this aerial, you can see it's developed for single family and townhomes. Current zoning is office commercial district, and you can see to the north and the west that it's general commercial. And to the south, we have, on the south side of Addison Avenue, a parcel that is office commercial district that is developed with an office building. And everything on the east side of Healing Way is, I believe, low-density residential district 2. So that would allow single-family townhomes. You'll remember a year or so ago that we did an ordinance amendment to the office commercial district, which removed single-family and townhomes as a permitted use. And so this was one of those, at that time, we rezoned areas that were either developed with single family or that property owners requested that they be rezoned to a different district to allow single family and townhomes. This is one that wasn't identified, and mainly because it is the appropriate zoning based on the future land use plan. Future land use shows it as mixed use commercial. We see Mount Rushmore Road to the west, an entrance corridor, and you'll notice that Healing Way is this dividing line. On the east side of Healing Way, we have urban neighborhood, and on the west side, we have mixed-use commercial. So as Healing Way is continued to be built to the south, we expect to see more higher density, either commercial development or office. And then on the east side is where we expect to see the lower intensity residential, like single-family townhomes, duplexes. Major street plan showing Mount Rushmore Road as a principal arterial, and then Healing Way, which is constructed to just south of the property, is a collector street, and there you can see it continues as a future collector as development will happen towards the south, which hasn't happened yet. So this is, north is this way. This is the associated preliminary subdivision plan proposing 13 single-family lots. And then on the north side, this is a large drainage lot, and we'll show you that drainage in the pictures later. So the reason for rezoning it to medium-density residential district is that it's a district that kind of fits in with mixed-use commercial, higher density residential, but with the associated preliminary subdivision plan for single-family lots. We're seeing the residential, which should be on the east side of Healing Way, moving over to the west side of Healing Way, and potentially in the future this may cause conflict with commercial development along Mount Rushmore Road, existing and future development. And the type of things that the conflict creates is when uses come in with apartment buildings, it's more of a high-density commercial use, not as much single backyards. And so there'll still be requirements on the adjacent properties if this property were to be developed with an apartment complex that fencing would be required, or additional setbacks to parking, buffering, where they're landscaping. 50% of it would have to be visible from the residential district. But what we're seeing is this is moving what should be on the east side of Healing Way onto the west side, and is in conflict with the comprehensive plan and the future land use plan. So this is looking into the property towards the north. The sign is posted on the property. Large elevation change going up. This is looking from the corner of Addison and Healing Way, looking to the north, and you can see the low-density residential on the east side of Healing Way. And this is directly across the street from Addison, that intersection of Addison and Healing Way, and the single-family residential. So this has been a great neighborhood that's coming up. It's mixed use, which is great with the comprehensive plan recommending having those office, those commercial uses, but also having a transition between those types of uses and residential, because we do want the residential up there for the people that live up there and having services nearby. But we want, the comprehensive plan recommends transitions, and Healing Way is that identified transition on that future land use plan between the mixed-use commercial and the urban neighborhood and lower density residential. This is looking south. The way Healing Way will continue to go as land develops to the south. This is looking south and west. There's an office building. That property is also in a planned development, so we saw that one in the past. There'll be another office building as a future phase. But that's the type of use that's up there. And then looking along Addison Avenue to the west, and additional commercial development, which is up over the hill. So you can see why Healing Way really is that dividing line. The elevations change, and the commercial over there has less of an impact on that lower density residential. This is on the north side of the property, looking west, the proposed drainage lot. So there's already as the neighbors who have called me, called it the big hole. So that would remain a drainage lot. And then looking from that north side, looking to the south and west at the property, and you can see the elevation change. And then looking north on Healing Way, and there we have a hotel which has been developed. We have Holiday gas station at the corner, large medical orthopedic facility. So it's developing with commercial and in compliance with the comprehensive plan. We're seeing those employer areas. What the comprehensive plan also recommends is a mix of housing. And so by proposing to rezone this and with the associated preliminary subdivision plan, we're losing that available area for higher density residential. So by limiting that, it's not to say that staying office commercial, it will develop as apartments. It could develop as commercial or as office space or medical. But it is the one area in this neighborhood that's existing where we can get some higher density, perhaps rental housing, and create that diverse housing mix, and allowing people that can't afford to buy in the area to be able to rent in the area. And then again on that north side of the property, looking to the north towards the intersection of Healing Way and Katrin Boulevard, and the lower density residential on that east side. I did get one call from a neighbor in this area, and they said they were okay with the proposed rezoning, that they would prefer to see single family. But after discussing with them our concerns and what the future land use plan and the comprehensive plan recommend, they said they weren't going to come into the meeting or submit anything, because though I know what their preference is, they understand our recommendation, which is to deny the rezoning request. So, like I said, Healing Way is identified as the transition on the future land use plan between the higher density commercial to the west along the Mount Rushmore Road entrance corridor and lower intensity residential to the east. This is in conflict with the associated preliminary subdivision plan. The rezoning would be in conflict with the comprehensive plan for creating a diverse housing stock potentially, and being more incompatible development, which may create conflict in that developing commercial corridor. Staff's recommendation is to deny, and the applicant is here to speak to the item, and if there are any questions for staff at this time.
Thanks, Fletcher. Mike, is your question for Fletcher?
The other thing that I didn't hear brought up is Addison Avenue may end up being a dead-end street, so to speak, because if they do the rebuild of Katrin and Mount Rushmore Road, that may not go to Mount Rushmore Road any longer. Does that affect this as well?
I believe you're correct in that it is in the plans to remove Addison Avenue as an approach onto Mount Rushmore Road. So then businesses on that would take access going north to Healing Way where there's a traffic light, or as Healing Way develops to the south, perhaps going to the south.
Okay.
Moon Meadows.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, I have a speaker request form from Kyle Trelaw to speak on this item.
I've learned I've got to really lean into this with the mask on, so I'll keep balancing act here. First, thank you everybody for hearing this item. We had a lot of great discussions with the staff on this, and I'm glad that we'll have the chance to kind of discuss this more here in front of you. There's a couple items that I think I just want to bring up, and Mike, you brought up one of the important ones that I'm going to share as well. We do feel and understand that this area is a transitional zone from the single family into the commercial uses to the west. And so we understand that point. There is some natural extensions, though, of this single-family community that would have some continuity into this development and into this new road that we're proposing. What this also does is provide some additional living space in this area, and another major point of the master plan is to provide those live-to-work areas. And this is providing some more residential units in this area. Now, granted that it is single-family residential, but across the street we do have much larger lots, much nicer lots than what we're proposing over here. These are going to be 50-foot wide lots, which will provide a denser, different type of living unit than we have across the street. So that, in combination with the fact that this isn't a random spot zoning where we're picking an area that's not connected to residential. This is an extension of an existing residential neighborhood. We are providing a little bit of a different housing type. It's still single family, which is why it was important for us to include the preliminary subdivision plan so that you as a planning commission could see what we're actually proposing. So we wanted that to be a part of this so that it was fully understood what we were proposing on this property. I do have just some of the additional pictures here, and I'm going to turn on the document camera. I am not near as brave as Fletcher to go out in the wintertime in the last weather, so I've got just some different views, and I don't know how well you guys can see these up there, but this.
Lights down.
So this is a view of the looking into the property. We've got the existing offices and medical facilities built up next to us. Let's see. I'll use this one. So the existing property sits right here on this picture. You do have your existing medical offices to our west. We have some office commercial located directly across Addison Avenue to the south. And then there are vacant lots that sit along Addison Avenue right now that extend to the west. I think that it's also an important note that much of our existing uses, and this is developed on all sides right now, we've got office commercial to the south, low, shorter buildings, limited use office, medical to the west of us, which is not a high intensity commercial style use either. With the view back, so this is a view back into and along the property here to kind of give another view. So the actual property sits right here. Access into the subdivision would come in through here, and you'd have your single-family lots that would take access from that. Here you can see the existing single-family neighborhood that we would be extending and continuing on from.
Okay.
And then just one kind of larger overall image here, just to kind of better orientate to, in which here's the subject property, here's the residential neighborhood, here's some of those existing medical uses. On this image, you can see the hotel, you can see the big hole, as it was noted, which is our detention pond that separates that. But I think it's also important to note that on Healing Way, we do have this interface. We've got a right-of-way separating some incredibly nice townhomes and single families with commercial use directly across the street from them. So the difference between uses here is one street width, and then we have similar separations with this lot, with Addison Avenue and the existing development. Mike brought up another important point, which is as we look to this property into the future, and one of the reasons that it has remained undeveloped for quite as long as it has is that the state is currently in the process of redoing this Highway 16 corridor. And with that, this is the current presentation, part of the current presentation from the state on the proposed rebuild of the Katrin Highway 16 exit. You can clearly see here that we've got Addison Avenue with all access closed off of Highway 16. So we lose a lot of our commercial and drive-through viability with this, which helps to lead to extending this residential neighborhood, because we've got a real use for that live-in right now. And into the future, the street is going to be cut off, which limits its long-term commercial and office viability. You can see that we have a vibrant corridor here where we have direct accesses. Our next signal is down here, then our next connection. So what this is going to end up is yes, it's zoned for commercial and offices, but also it's quite a ways off of any given path into this area, which really affects its commercial value. You can also see on this is that we do and we have had a significant amount of commercial ground that has sat vacant for quite some time here off of this Addison Avenue, just to the west of us as well, which kind of leads to a not nearly as important from a land planning aspect, but from the financial reality that this area isn't developing as commercial. And I can also tell you that we've actively worked to develop this property as apartments or office commercial. And even with our strip mall that we built across the street, we still have half of that's been vacant for over 3 years. And there's a true viability that is this area capable of developing this, which we haven't had in the short term. But then as we look into the future, when we lose our connectivity to Highway 16, we think that that's going to be even less, which tends to support the residential neighborhood that we're proposing today. The last item that I just kind of want to bring up is Highway 16 is an entrance corridor into the city of Rapid City. With that, it's got some of the most amazing views that we have in this area. Usually it's a little bit of an opposite deal for me, but in this case, we're proposing single-family homes, no disruption to the skyline, on probably one of the higher points of this property. So as you're looking to make a motion and a recommendation on this property, I think that that's another important point, because one of the key concepts inside of the comprehensive plan 2 is maintaining those entrance corridors. And one second, I can't breathe very well. So maintaining that entrance corridor, those views, those natural skylines from a property just like this. if there's any questions or any points that need to be brought up in discussion, I'm available to answer them. But just wanted to bring those out, point out that there is some benefit to this, that as we've proposed, and that it would have some potential long-term good that could help to grow this area and continue development through this corridor. Thank you.
Thank you. Karen, do you have a question for me?
I do. Kyle, while you're still there, I think there was the plating portion that showed that this is phase one, what you had. Does that mean there's another phase, or does that is that the whole property that you were showing?
Nope, that's the entire property. So there's one short cul-de-sac with 13 lots on it. And they're all that 50-foot wide range, which is the minimum width that you can put on a single-family lot to, and that's where when I bring up the difference in housing types, we've got, these are going to be denser housing, tighter together than we do have on the east side of Healing Way.
Okay. Okay, and just as a comment, I guess, you know, when we do a comprehensive plan and we look at what we should have, I think, you know, I'm reluctant to say, well, let's take this commercial side and just put houses over there, because you're putting the houses right next to the commercial properties. I know what's there now, though, and I know that area, since I live up there, I know that area is really nice, and I can imagine the people who live across the street from here would rather have single-family houses than they would, you know, a commercial entity of any kind. So I'm conflicted with that, and so I just thought I'd ask the question and bring that up, so thanks.
Haven?
I appreciate this discussion because it raises an issue that I wanted to discuss maybe in the discussion portion of our meeting later this morning. And that is, you know, when we meet here every other week, we discuss particular applications for a particular piece of property. And, you know, and just thinking about this last night when I was looking at the agenda, we don't get the big picture. We just look at individual parcels. And clearly, I think the staff here is looking at the big picture. You know, what, you know, how should this area be developed, and how that affects the planned development of particular parcels in the area. And I just wanted to make that comment. I don't know whether Vicki or anybody on the staff would have comments. Again, I would appreciate some, or I'm not able to, or being a member of the commission, really see the big picture because we just deal with individual parcels, and sometimes it's hard to see what the big picture is for a development of a particular area.
Mr. Chair, that's a really good statement, Haven, and we knew this was going to be difficult for you folks this morning. Kyle did a great job trying to explain why it is that the development of this site is leaning more towards single family. And we understand that, we get it, and Fletcher acknowledged today that a neighbor called and said, you know, we'd rather see it single family. If you leave it off as commercial, it could be an apartment development, and we may have a discussion in this room similar to what we had at Johnson Ranch. But we as your professional planners take into account the adopted comprehensive plan. And a part of that is the city's laid out future land use plan. And it has to have merit, or why have it at all? And I think Fletcher did a good job this morning clarifying the step down of land uses to mitigate the nuisances of what could come from general commercial onto those single family and 2-unit residential developments. So in that regard, it's okay to look at this specific to this area, because that analogy applies throughout all areas of our city where we're trying to marry commercial with residential or industrial with residential. And we need to have some parameters that we hold firm to ensure that as a city, we are leading ourselves to the best laid plan, not just for today, but long-term as well. So noting that the future land use plan did not support the rezone, we could not come forward with a recommendation to approve, realizing that that comprehensive plan has to have merit. So does that kind of answer your question, Haven?
Yes, sure.
Rachel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is kind of a hard one because, I came into this feeling very much on the side with the staff. But some of the concerns that I have for situations like this, I think we heard it at one of the most recent city council meetings where people buy into a property not realizing what's going up around them. And I don't think you're going to see that as much here because most of what's around it is already around it. I also find it very persuasive that, there's a good chance that commercial development might not actually be supported in this area just because of some of the transportation changes that are going on. I think those are all very good points. And I also think that, it's always good to be flexible for a little bit of organic growth. I don't think that just because we might say that this was supposed to be one designation and we're changing it now, that throws out the whole comprehensive plan is illegitimate. I think it just simply says that, it's okay to have a little bit of flexibility, and the staff obviously does. So I'm a little bit more undecided on this one. But I just wanted to point out that I do think it's really important when people are buying property, individuals buying property, that it's really important to see, what kind of street classifications abutting, what kind of zoning is around you. And I don't think your typical, home buyer is looking into that because that's something that you just wouldn't think of, unless you're involved in it. So normally I would be against this for that reason, because I think a home buyer might kind of buy something and not realize that something huge could go up next to them. But I think in this case it's okay because you already see what's there. So thank you.
John?
What's the price point of these houses going in on the smaller lots?
Kyle, if you have a minute.
So across the street on the larger lots, we've got prices that range from the 350 to the 400,000, and some of those townhomes that are closer to the hotel, they're upwards of $500,000 a side. On these 50-foot lots, we don't have the actual footprint of those, but we're expecting it to be closer to that 250 to 300. So it'll be one step below kind of what's out there as existing home stock.
Okay, my other comment, well, the comprehensive plan is a living document. It evolves. I mean, I've been on this thing a long time, and we've done studies, and we've said, yeah, here's what we want to have, ideally in the perfect world. But once it starts developing, it changes. And so you have to adjust to what's there, not only anticipating what's going to be there. I think this is a good idea to do this as single family. It'll be a lower price point. And I thought that was one of the big deals going on now, affordable housing for people.
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
So I would suspect that in at least half of the rezones that we bring before you, if you're reading them closely, there's a paragraph that we have to answer, does this comply with the comprehensive plan? And at least half of the time we say no, that it doesn't. But in being flexible in reviewing it with the parameters that Fletcher went through today, would it have an impact on land use conflict, street classification, topographic separation? You'll see in there over and over again where we say it doesn't currently comply, but when we do our next periodic update of the future land use plan, we're going to make the revision so it does comply. And we will respect whatever decision you folks do today. But I think the reason we didn't do that in this instance was laid out very well by Fletcher, and I won't repeat it.
Thanks, Vicki. Mike Klosny?
A lot of good comments here, kind of piggybacking on what's been said by multiple people up here. I guess I foresee that some of this commercial because of Addison Avenue being a problem, could disappear. And I just foresee this changing in the master plan. Is there any chance of that, Vicki, I guess? Because losing Addison will change the whole thought process. And like I said, I foresee some of these businesses not wanting to be where they are, and they have enough capital that they could move.
So we have a future land use team, and it is amazing how they reach out to other organizations as they're putting together their plan. And I would suspect that if it does come to pass that Addison should disconnect from Mount Rushmore Road, which is a state decision, not a city decision, this is something that they'll review again. But with the existing development that's there today, they're holding firm to this designation at this location.
Does this behoove the developer? I believe the state plan is going effect this year. The last I heard, they want to get this on the road. And they have two plans, and one of them is to have Addison disappear basically off to. So that said, has there been anything said to you that this will happen in 6 months, that it will happen in, nothing's been said as far as?
Stacy Bartlett with South Dakota Department of Transportation is a part of our MPO group, and we have open communication. In fact, every application we get gets sent to her. And she did not have, take a position that deferred from staff's recommendation as a part of this rezone.
Okay.
She has not identified this is exactly what's going to happen. It is an option. It's something that is definitely being considered. I don't believe that they've tied down if it should be the one they choose when that would happen.
Mr. Chair, could I have KTM come up and see if they have any more information on that?
So we work with, obviously, we've got a lot of developments and interest in this entire corridor. So we've been working hand in hand with the DOT on a lot of the discussion that we have here. What I can tell you is that their current timeline puts the adoption of the plan for this spring, with construction set for funding year 2026. Now, I'm going to caveat that with they've pushed this back before, but that's the current schedule that they have laid out right now.
Okay. The concern is, as we move forward, in my opinion, is that this is going to change designation only because I don't see this being as commercial without Addison as it is right now. And so I probably would be leaning more towards going to the residential, and I guess I'd like to have the decision made on what's happening with Addison before we went with this, but I think Addison is the top of concern.
All right, Eric Hikas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think what echoes in my mind is the comments that Fletcher made about the intention for tiered zoning to happen, and this is an ideal lot for that delivery. I think you really laid out very well the intention of having sort of a walk down from commercial to residential on two sides. My own personal opinion that we may have an inventory of mean that might be too much at this point, and that's the price point that I kind of see as mean. There might be some better use for this and in more of the traditional mixed use. So I would support staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to clarify, if I could, Fletcher, when you said that you had phone calls from residents and they were in favor of not changing. Is that correct?
Sure.
So got a phone call because they got a letter in the mail, so our notification worked. And explained to them that the applicant is requesting to rezone the medium density residential and has submitted a preliminary subdivision plan for low density resident or single family homes.
Right.
And they said they would prefer that. And I explained, staff's position of why we weren't going to be supporting it, because I didn't want them to think, oh, they submitted it, it's just going to go through. Let him know what our position is, and at the end of it, he said, thank you for not being a bureaucrat, and said that he wasn't going to come to the meeting or submit a letter because even though he would prefer to see single family, he would be okay with the zoning staying the way it was.
Right.
If that was the city's decision, so.
And do we have any idea if there was, as far as the growth of businesses and any commercial activity interested in this area? Okay.
No, but I mean, as we've seen in this corridor, it is a growing corridor, and you know, Black Hills Power coming in with jobs here. As Kyle said, you know, they've got a strip mall developed, they've got a coffee shop going in here. You know, there's apartments going in to the north here. We've seen the big orthopedic. The medical that was along Addison has been there for a while, but the gas station on the corner. So, I mean, there are some lots that are still vacant, but we have seen, you know, and definitely this whole area with single family. So just based on the comprehensive plan and the way we're reviewing it and transitions and what the comprehensive plan recommends, staff's position is to deny, but you know, there is development, commercial development happening, and it should pick up once they decide what to do with that intersection at Mount Rushmore Road and Katrin.
And how long do you anticipate some kind of decision on that?
Again, I don't know. Kip is our transportation planner. I don't know. He's probably not watching this meeting right now, so he's not going to run in here. But as Kyle said, the current plan is to build by 2026, but that's been pushed back.
Exactly.
And made in the future, so.
Okay, thanks, Fletcher. I appreciate the clarity. Thank you.
Yep.
Stephen?
Maybe for my benefit, if we approve it, what are what happens going forward, and if we disapprove the application, what are the options for the applicant?
Yeah. So the rezoning is before you for review. You're going to make a recommendation to City Council, so it'll go to first reading at the next City Council meeting, and with whatever recommendation you make to City Council. If it is to deny, it still goes to the next City Council meeting. If it's to approve, it does as well. What the difference is, if you recommend to deny and City Council denies it, it ends there. If you recommend to approve or deny and Council recommends to approve, it would go to a second City Council meeting. So we're making a recommendation to you, you're making a recommendation to City Council, and City Council makes the decision.
All right, any other comments on this items, questions for staff or anybody? Karen?
I'm going to make a motion to deny this request based on the staff's recommendation. And just so everybody knows, it's basically because I hate to change the comprehensive plan. That's just my opinion. But I do understand the other side totally, and City Council may have a different viewpoint. So thank you.
Eric Heikus seconded Karen's motion to deny the rezoning request. Any discussion on that motion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? No? Can we do a roll call, Andrea? Myself included, we're all very muffled during this.
Braun,
No?
Caesar, Vidal, Gallagher, Stuck, Wozni, Bowman, Her, Ficus. Motion passes.
5-4. All right. That takes care of item number 10. Ordinance amendment, item number 11.
So item number 11 is an ordinance amendment to create a new plating process known as the transfer lot plating process. Currently, pursuant to South Dakota codified law, if a property is within a city limits or 3 miles of a municipality of a certain size, which Rapid City falls within, then it has to be platted using the city's plating procedure if it's less than 40 acres or cannot be described by eloquent description. And what I mean by eloquent description is like a quarter section. When it requires a meets and bounds, you can't just file a deed on a 50-acre parcel and create it by meets and bounds. You have to go through the plating process. In addition, if you could create something by eloquent description, the north half of the south half of the west half of the east half, that's all eloquent, but if it's less than 40 acres, you can't file a deed either. It has to be platted. The difference between deeding and platting is if you deed it, you go to Register of Deeds, you create a new legal description, you can transfer ownership. When you plat it using the municipality's platting procedure, in our jurisdiction, you have to address subdivision improvements. There are times where we have a property owner that has a piece of property, maybe it's half of a 40-acre parcel. They developed the one half into residential lots. They thought they were going to do the other half. They just want to sell it. Or they want to develop it, but they want to put it in a different LLC, which financially protects them. They can't create a legal description just for purposes of transfer unless they address all the subdivision improvements, dedicate the right-of-way, build the streets, extend the utilities, etc. So in looking at meeting the need to allow developers to create a transfer lot so that we can get infill development in these balances that would otherwise trigger subdivision improvements, we sat down with one particular developer in the area. Wade from the attorney's office joined us, and we came up with the document that we're presenting to you today. And here's how it would work. If someone has a property that is less than 40 acres or cannot be described by eloquent description within our platting jurisdiction, they would submit a transfer lot application. As a part of that, they would enter into a restricted covenant that would limit any development on the property. And let me preface that by saying the only properties that qualify would be those that are undeveloped. There is a provision in here that they could go to council if they had a minimal development on it. If council would grant the authorization for them to follow this procedure, then they could. But we want to make sure that there's something besides just transferring the ownership that's going to trigger additional platting so we get our right-of-way, so we get our utility extensions. As a part of this restricted covenant, they wouldn't be able to get a building permit, a grading permit. They wouldn't be able to come in and rezone it. They couldn't do an initial plan development. They would have to replat it first. We want that to be a recordable covenant agreement so that any future owner knows that that is required before they anticipate development. In addition to that, we want it to be called on the plat restricted lot and then a number or a letter. And the reason for that is a lot of people looking at a plat or looking at a property that's up for sale, maybe it's even going for not paying back taxes. Those are usually drainage lots, open space lots, utility lots, and they kind of secure the use as the labeling on the lot. So by calling it restricted lot, those looking at it, either using Rapid Map, getting a copy of the plat, would see that there's a restriction on that property. They're going to call us and we're going to have this discussion. They're also going to get a copy of that recorded covenant agreement that further explains what's needed. It's interesting that the same developer that worked with us has approached the state legislature, and they've got a House bill on the floor right now that is going to require municipalities to create this process if that bill gets passed. We're ahead of the game on this one. Sioux Falls did create a transfer lot process about a year ago. It's been used and it's been very successful. So we are excited about this. We're hoping that some of that infill development that just is left there because the particular owner doesn't want to develop it, but he can't sell it to someone who does without facing these improvements, that will open up the opportunity for that property to be developed. So with that, we are recommending to approve this ordinance amendment. If you have any questions, myself or Wade could answer them.
Thanks, Vicki. John?
So this would make the city partner to the covenants?
Wade? You need to be at the microphone for this one.
I'll just sneak up here. Yeah, the city would be a party to the covenant. It would be basically an agreement between the city and the property owner that says, here are the restrictions on the property.
Interesting, okay.
Haven?
And when the restricted lot is created, I might have missed that, can that restricted lot then be conveyed?
This is being done for the sole purposes of conveying ownership.
Okay, so so it could be conveyed without triggering the other requirements.
It could be sold, but you could not develop it, not even get a grading permit unless it's replatted.
Rachel?
I saw DRT, that's just Development Review Team, right? Okay. And then, so the Development Review Team, that's just long-range planning, people like that. Is it staff or who's on that team?
There's about 13 agencies, the state, Register of Deeds, when appropriate, the county.
Okay. So if there's a restrictive covenant on this lot, or this area, if a property owner, someone buys that property and then, what kind of process is there in place to make sure that someone's not going to purchase this without knowing, let's say they look at restrictive, they don't know what it is. Is that their only clue that there's some restriction on this lot, or is there something else in place that when you buy it, you actually know what's going on with that property?
Two things. One, it's going to be labeled restricted lot, which identifies it's restricted. And number two, the covenant agreement that lists all the items noted in the memo summary that will be a part of that agreement will be recorded. So
Okay.
anyone purchasing it will have ownership of that covenant.
So that's recorded with the county?
It's recorded.
Okay, thank you.
I'm basically going to repeat that question, but in a different way. We hear all the time about neighborhood covenants that we aren't allowed to enforce when we see a detached garage in certain neighborhoods or things like that. And we hear from those applicants, even though it's not part of our discussion, that they didn't know about said covenants. Is there something incumbent upon a title agency or whoever else is involved in the sale that they will be required to disclose these covenants during the sale process?
So, Mr. Chair, I'm going to make a statement, and then I'm going to defer to Wade on, I just don't know about title companies. I believe there is a legal obligation, but note that we require covenants on plats and land use plans all the time. Whenever you see a stipulation that says, prior to submittal of a final plat or prior to issuance of a building permit, the applicant shall enter into a covenant agreement to ensure that residential structures are fire suppression designed, or that the building material has got fire considerations, or that a wildland fire plan be in place. We at times know that this particular developer will not own the lot forever, so we want any future owner to understand that that covenant is there. And just because we don't enforce property owner, homeowners association covenants, we do create covenants that we do have the authority to enforce. And then as to what legally has to be disclosed, Wade, maybe you could help us out.
Wade, that'd be great.
Sure. Yeah, I just want to kind of go back a second to what Vicki was saying. I guess there's a difference in enforcing covenants. Generally, we enforce covenants we're a party to. Sure. So if we say as a requirement of development, you have to sprinkler protect these houses because fire flows aren't met, whatever the case might be, we'll enforce that covenant. When it's a covenant that's basically a contract between other parties that the city's not a party to, and it affects development of the property, we only enforce our ordinances as opposed to the contracts between, or the agreements between other parties. So I think that's kind of the difference between the homeowners covenants that govern a specific subdivision and a covenant that we would require as part of a development. So as far as disclosure, I don't know that there's I can't tell you what all is required, and the disclosure sheet's really long. I can't tell you if this would be on there or not. And this is kind of new, I think, maybe. So, but the whole idea of recording is that it's putting the public on notice. So, I mean, that's part of due diligence, I guess, if you're going to buy a property, that you need to look at the title and see, that's why you engage a title company to give you title insurance. They tell you what encumbrances there are. And so this would be recorded so that anybody who looked at the title of this property would see, if the name didn't give it away, that it's restricted, to figure out what that's about, then the covenants would come up in a title search.
Well, I guess as long as it shows up on the deed to the, at the county, then that's good enough. I just draw a distinction between requiring fire suppression in the house, because that, by necessity, there's a final inspection by the city before that house is occupied. In this case, the city won't be party, or they'll be party to the covenant, but they won't be part of the transaction that conveys it. They won't be there at the signing at the title company, or if it's God forbid, a handshake deal and a napkin out on the South 20. So that's my fear, is that it gets misrepresented once it's out in the field and the city's not there to correct anything.
Sure, and just if I might, we've had to work around this in the past, and it's not easy. One that comes to mind that just happened here not so long ago was a retailer that was buying a piece of property. It needed to be platted for them to be able to, the property owner to transfer it to this retailer, and they were willing to enter into a development agreement, the buyer, the retailer, that would secure the infrastructure improvements, but that's not always the case. A lot of people don't want to do that until they actually have title and they come in, and so it's kind of a tough situation to get around in some cases, because we want to help this development happen where it's appropriate, and so I think this is just sort of another tool to help people get that property transferred so that it can be developed according to our ordinances.
All right. Thank you, Wade. Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I guess I want to follow up, Wade, if I could. And I'm trying not to conflate the two. The covenants that the city would be liable for, and a covenant for, let's use a homeowner association. So a homeowner association, I move in, the covenants say that I have to put up 3 trees on my property within the first 5 years. And of course, as you've just explained, the covenant regarding the city ordinances. Is there a statute of limitations? Like, I don't put up those 3 trees within 5 years, and 10 years go by, and am I still liable? Now, I know we're not, would I still be liable for putting up those trees? But then, is there a statute of limitations on the covenants that the city ordinances impose? I guess that's a complicated question.
It is.
Yeah.
So there is a statute that's a little bit vague. It gives I want to say 25-year limit, but that is a covenant that a property owner puts on property within city limits. So that's not necessarily, it doesn't say anything about city involvement in that. So the idea there is that if you owned a large chunk of property in city limits and you said, this can only be used as single-family housing, and you wanted to put that on perpetually, the state law would say, no, that's got a time limit. You can't tie that property up for all of time. So at some point in time, the use can change, and so that would not allow us to rezone it to have different uses. This covenant would override everything and tie that property up within a city forever. And so state law says you can't do that. So whether that applies to this kind of situation has never really been litigated. To me, it's a different situation because the city's a party to it as opposed to a property owner just putting limits on property, wanting to do it forever. In this situation, there is consideration exchanged. We're not paying them, but we're allowing them to use this process to be able to transfer, as opposed to building infrastructure and having to, it's allowing them to do something in exchange for the covenant. So I think that is a little bit of a distinction.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Vicki?
and let me point out too that even if it's deemed by some court later on that the restrictive covenants has expired, by adopting this ordinance, the fact that we're labeling this restricted lot, it will still require that they replat prior to any development, and that ordinance doesn't expire. So we will, our concern is that someone would transfer it to an entity and they would be able to come in and put a strip mall in on that property. And maybe we'd never get that collector street that we've all been waiting for, or we wouldn't get that looped water main that another developer needs in order to develop his property. So I think that in looking at that, we've tried to find that balance. It gives the current owner the ability to transfer ownership, to encourage development. We want everyone to be on notice of what is going to be required next. And after it transfers ownership, the very next thing is it's replatted before any development is allowed.
Okay, all right, well, thank you, yes.
Rachel?
Apologize for speaking twice. I think Eric kind of brought up what the point that I was kind of getting to that's a concern for me. I mean, I do think this ordinance amendment is extremely important, don't get me wrong. But my concern is that the enforcement occurs after a property is sold, rather than having some sort of protection for buyers, buying it unwittingly. And I understand there are protections, if you're doing your due diligence and buying a property, you should see this. But I would like to see a little bit more. I don't know, I'm not involved in that, in real estate or anything, so I don't know what you could do. But if there's any way we could protect, potential property buyers so that they know for sure that this is what this property is. I don't know if there's a mechanism for that, but that's my concern. I just wanted to vocalize it.
Thanks, Rachel. Karen?
I have just a quick question. If a property is put on as a restricted property, and that's, recorded, and the homeowner or the owner wants to transfer that property, he can do it through this ordinance. When the other homeowner gets it, or a person gets it, not the city homeowner, but then that restriction stays on that property. So the only time you can get rid of that restriction is if you replat. Okay, thank you.
You knew the answer.
Sometimes we just have to say it out loud. All right, any further questions, comments on this item? Okay. Karen made the motion to approve the ordinance amendment to create a platting process to facilitate the transfer of unplatted property less than 40 acres. And Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, any discussion items, staff items today? Vicki?
I think that Haven made a really good comment when we were talking about the rezone. I'm going to visit with the future land use planners and see if maybe in the future when we have a really short agenda, maybe having them come to the meeting and giving a brief presentation as to how that future land use plan gets put together so that you do get a feel for the big picture of the city. I really appreciated that comment. And the second thing I wanted to say is this. I'm a firm believer that conflict is a direct result of poor communication. I am so happy at the communication that staff has with the Planning Commission, that the applicants enjoy from the Planning Commission. I've worked for the city for a number of years. We've got a solid group of people up here that are actively involved in reviewing the items that we bring forward, that are asking questions, that are encouraging conversation from each other. And it is rare that we have an item that leaves this meeting with conflict unresolved, and that's because of you. I just wanted to let you know that your hard work shows, and we appreciate it, so thank you.
It was very nice. Vince?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Vicki, because that's exactly what I was thinking of just now. It was a tough decision today regarding, single-family homes, commercial business, and I guess I look back on it, where my mama used to say, a bird in the hand is worth two in the brush, and the comprehensive plan is a bird in the hand. It helps us, and that's where I was going with that. So I would love the long-range planners to come in here and give us a broader overview of everything. Thank you.
Yep. Fletcher reminded me too that the initial plan development to allow the 150-unit apartment building at Johnson Ranch was appealed to council, and Fletcher and I were there Tuesday night, and City Council did uphold the decision of the Planning Commission, and they did approve the apartment development and the associated rezone. And again, the open conversation that you folks had laid so much of that conflict into record, so we knew what to look for as we went forward into council, and Fletcher did a great job facilitating some of that between the property owners in the area and the applicant, and we came to a common ground as it went forward to council.
Great. Haven?
I had a question for Vicki. As I was going through the agenda again last night, I noted like item number 2, a preliminary subdivision plan for Park Hill subdivision number 7, located in Park Hill subdivision number 7. And item number 3, kind of the same thing, for Antelope View Estates, located in Antelope View Estates. It doesn't help us too much to, obviously it's located in those particular subdivisions. I'm just kind of wondering why it, the sentence really doesn't provide any clarification. And
so a little history. So we used to say, Item number 7, preliminary subdivision plan for Antelope View Estates located at the current southern terminus of North Valley Drive. But this director has requested that we put the subdivision in there as the location. I'll visit with him about that and see if we can, because if you look at the staff report under location, we do put what street it's off of. And then in the first paragraph, or the first part under general information, we do describe exactly where it's located and what development exists on the property. So but you're right, if you're just trying to glance at the agenda and get an idea of where you're at, we'll try to link that up. But just so you know, that was done at the direction of the director, and I'll share with him that maybe we need to go back to how we used to do it.
Yeah, it does require us to go into the staff report, which is good. I guess that's a good part of it. But anyway, not to be too picky.
Very good.
All right, Rachel.
Need to prolong things anymore, but I did have a thought earlier with this ordinance amendment. I see staff, it seems like all the time you guys work with applicants and you work with developers. We saw it, with the TIF ordinance amendments that didn't go through. There was just so much opportunity to work with staff, work with city. And I think a lot of people don't see that if they're not actually, watching these meetings, attending. I mean, who would watch the 7 o'clock planning commission meeting? But, I think staff really does a fantastic job of balancing the needs of the cities and the city's interests with also working with applicants and hearing their concerns and actually trying to mitigate conflict and bring together a solution. And I just think that that's extremely rare. I don't think you see that in very many places. So I just wanted to point that out too.
I second that. Thank you all. All right, any other comments today? Any airing of grievances? Perfect. Mike Gallagher made the motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Karen seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.